Hi, my name is Jennifer Duncan, and I am a member of the ts'eeda First Nation and the Yoni K Land Corporation. I am from the ts'oga Goatene. Ts'oga, which is my Goatene, means white lichen people. White lichen is a food that caribou love to eat, and it's found on my traditional territory. I am a lawyer, and I've been practicing for 16 years. I specialize in advocating for and advancing Indigenous rights. One of the files that I am working on right now for my Indigenous government is addressing significant issues regarding traditional knowledge, knowledge of Indigenous peoples, and local knowledge systems related to and responding to caribou in the Arctic. We are asserting our Indigenous right to harvest caribou according to our traditional laws. There was blame being placed on my people that they were over harvesting caribou. And so we knew as Indigenous people that we were not over harvesting caribou, that we've always been very respectful with caribou, and we've always harvested them using our traditional laws. So when a system from outside of our culture was coming in to say and place blame on my people, we knew inherently that that wasn't right. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 2007. And at that time, a number of states, including Canada, unfortunately, did not support the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Fortunately, though, after a number of years of advocacy by Indigenous leaders in Canada and around the world, the Canadian government did change its position on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And on June 21st, 2021, which is National Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada, the government of Canada adopted that legislation fully, and it came into force in Canada. So when we have the UN Declaration and federal legislation now being brought into force and being implemented to really undo that racist and colonial history, we can actually see that, okay, now we have a tool in writing, we have Canadian law that is actively working to reverse and correct the injustices that occurred in the past and that are occurring today. So that is extremely powerful and important because now we have clear direction from the Canadian government that the UN Declaration applies in Canada and it has legal force and effect. I encourage First Nations leaders, negotiators, members of First Nations communities who are involved in the negotiation of a modern treaty or a self-government agreement to again ensure that the strength of UNDRIP is written directly into self-government agreements. And for those Indigenous peoples who have existing modern treaties, also known as a self-government agreement or a land claim agreement, just because there's already an existing treaty, and if there's no opportunity to get the words directly into that treaty at this point, there's still ways to ensure that the modern treaty that exists is reflecting the basic minimum standards of human rights for Indigenous peoples. For people who are wondering, what can I do to adopt the UN Declaration to advance human rights for Indigenous peoples? It involves, number one, reading the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, reading the Canadian federal legislation, and then talking to your MLAs about what they're doing to pass legislation on the territorial level. I'm really proud of where we are now with this federal legislation, and I'm hopeful about the future of where we can go as Canadians. In my language, we say elders, it's Denahisha. So when I'm reading the declaration, I can see and hear my elders' words being reflected in that document. And those truths are really important to me. And so it really is very empowering and encouraging and hopeful